I held the charred remains in my hands, the smoke still curling up from the pile of papers we were ordered to burn. The smell of scorched ink filled the cold air, but amidst the ashes and half-burned sheets, I knew something was missing: one page, one single, fragile piece of paper that I had hidden. They wanted those papers gone, erased without a trace, but I couldn't let that happen. Not this time. You have to understand, this wasn't just any journal. It belonged to the military chaplain assigned to our unit in Ukraine, a man who was supposed to bring us hope and comfort in the darkest days of war. But his journal wasn't full of prayers or sermons. No, it was filled with secrets, terrifying truths no one was ready to face, things that could change everything if they ever saw the light of day. I was warned to burn it all, no questions asked, and to forget everything I'd read. But how do you erase the truth once it's been written? The chaplain's papers had been discovered shortly after he vanished during a fierce firefight near the front lines. Rumors spread quickly. Some said he'd been taken prisoner, others whispered of something far worse. Before we could find out, an order came down the chain: destroy all his documents immediately. The command came from high up, too high for us to question. It was clear someone didn't want those pages to survive. I remember the night vividly. The sky was overcast, the air thick with tension. We gathered the journals, folders, everything the chaplain had kept hidden in his tent. Soldiers stood guard, their faces grim, knowing the importance of what we were about to do, but powerless to stop it. I watched as flames swallowed the papers, the fire's glow casting long shadows on the worn canvas walls. But then I felt the weight of the decision. Should I let all of this burn, or save just one piece? My hands trembled as I slipped a single page into my jacket, hiding it close to my heart. It was the last thing I read before the flames, a chilling entry that didn't just speak of faith or hope, but of betrayal, fear, and warnings no one wanted to hear. The words were cryptic, but clear enough to send a shiver down my spine. Something terrible was coming, something that could turn the tide of the war, and not in our favor. Since that night, I have lived with the fear of discovery. Every glance, every step feels like someone might find me out. The hidden page is a secret that could cost me my life, but also one I am determined to protect. Because if this secret is revealed, it could expose a truth buried beneath layers of deception, a truth the powers that be have fought desperately to hide. The journal spoke of events we never talked about, of missions that never officially existed. It hinted at betrayal from within our own ranks, whispers of deals made in shadows, and forces at play beyond our understanding. The chaplain's words described moments when the line between friend and enemy blurred, when loyalty was tested by fear and desperation. What haunted me most was the chaplain's final entry, the last page I saved. It wasn't just a warning. It was a plea for someone to listen, to remember, and to carry the truth forward. He wrote about the faces of those lost, the innocent caught in the crossfire, and the price we all paid for silence. Reading it felt like holding a mirror to the war itself, brutal, messy, and full of secrets no one wanted to admit. The risk I took that night was more than just hiding a piece of paper. It was defiance against an invisible enemy determined to erase history and control the narrative. But I knew that some stories must be told, even if they're painful or dangerous. Because war isn't just about battles and victories, it's about the people, their sacrifices, and the truths that get buried along the way. In the weeks that followed, tension in our unit grew. Conversations stopped abruptly when I entered the room, and eyes darted nervously whenever I glanced their way. I could feel suspicion creeping closer, but I held my ground, determined to keep the secret safe. The fear wasn't just for me, it was for anyone who dared to uncover what really happened. I often wonder what would have happened if I'd obeyed that order completely. If I had let the fire consume everything, would it have made a difference? Or would the truth have eventually slipped out in some other way? The pages I saved represent more than just forbidden knowledge. They symbolize courage in the face of silence, and the fight for truth in a world built on lies. Now, as I sit here sharing this story, I know the danger is far from over. The forces that demanded the destruction of the chaplain's journal are still out there, watching, waiting. But I am no longer just a soldier following orders. I am the keeper of a secret that could shake the foundations of this war and perhaps even the world. I don't know what will happen next. Maybe one day, these pages will find the right hands and bring the truth to light. Until then, I carry the weight of those words with me, knowing that sometimes the most powerful weapon in war isn't a gun or a bomb, but a story that refuses to be forgotten. He wasn't just any chaplain. Father Alexander was a quiet man with a steady voice, a presence that somehow brought calm to the chaos around us. In the middle of the hellish war zone in Ukraine, where gunfire shattered the silence and the ground shook under explosions, he was the one who carried more than just a Bible. Soldiers trusted him not only for prayers, but for a rare kind of hope, something that could hold together broken spirits when everything else seemed lost. But there was more to Father Alexander than what we saw on the surface. Behind that calm exterior, he carried a burden few knew about, a secret journal that chronicled everything he witnessed, things no one else dared write down. The war zone was unlike anything I had ever seen before. The once peaceful villages were now crumbled ruins, streets littered with debris and memories of lives shattered in an instant. Every day was a battle not just against the enemy, but against fear itself. The soldiers around me moved with cautious steps, faces hardened by loss, eyes scanning the horizon for threats that could come without warning. Civilians huddled in makeshift shelters, their faces pale with exhaustion and terror. It was a place where time slowed in some moments and raced uncontrollably in others. The line between survival and death was razor thin, and the only certainty was uncertainty. Father Alexander moved among us like a ghost of mercy in this nightmare. His role wasn't just to say prayers before missions or comfort the wounded. He was something more: an observer, a keeper of truths that were too dangerous to speak aloud. What he recorded in his journal went far beyond spiritual reflections. He documented everything he saw: the broken promises from commanders, the suffering of innocent civilians caught in the crossfire, the unspoken horrors hidden behind official reports. His journal was a mirror reflecting the brutal reality we all tried to ignore but couldn't escape. Unlike others who might have shied away from the darker side of war, Father Alexander confronted it head-on. He wrote about the exhaustion etched on soldiers' faces after days without sleep, about the whispered rumors of betrayals within our own ranks, and about secret operations nobody was supposed to know. His words revealed a hidden war behind the front lines, a war fought not just with guns but with deception, fear, and silence. The journal became more than a collection of notes. It was a testament to the truth, a record of the human cost of conflict that those in power wanted to bury. I remember once watching him kneel quietly in the rubble of a bombed-out village, whispering prayers for families who had nowhere left to go. There was a sadness in his eyes, a heaviness that came from witnessing too much pain and injustice, yet even in that darkness, he held on to hope. His journal was his way of fighting back, not with weapons, but with words that demanded to be heard. He believed that if the truth survived, so would the memory of those lost and the hope for a better future. The chaplain's journal wasn't just for himself or the soldiers. It was a secret message to anyone who might one day find it. He wrote for the world beyond the war zone, for people who deserved to know what really happened behind the headlines and official statements. He risked everything by writing those words, knowing full well that the truth he captured was dangerous. In a place where lies and propaganda spread as fast as bullets, his journal was a beacon, a fragile yet powerful light in a sea of darkness. What made Father Alexander's role so unusual was that he was caught between two worlds, the sacred and the brutal. His duties demanded compassion and faith, but his experiences forced him to confront the worst of humanity. His journal became a place where he could confess his doubts, record his fears, and document the injustices that no one else dared acknowledge. It was a sacred duty, wrapped in danger, a balancing act that weighed heavily on his soul. The chaos around us was relentless. Each day brought new challenges: skirmishes with enemy forces, desperate evacuations of civilians, and the constant threat of betrayal from within. The war had fractured everything: families, friendships, even the very trust between soldiers. And through it all, Father Alexander remained a witness. His journal was the only place where those fractured pieces came together, forming a painful but honest picture of what war truly meant. The danger in his writings was not just from enemy forces, but from those who wanted to control the narrative. The truths in his journal challenged powerful interests and exposed uncomfortable realities. That's why, when the order came to burn his papers, it was clear that someone feared what his words could do if they ever got out. They weren't just trying to destroy a man's notes, they were trying to erase a history that threatened to unravel carefully constructed lies. In that war-torn landscape, the chaplain's journal was more than ink on paper. It was a symbol of resistance, a testament to courage in the face of overwhelming darkness. Father Alexander understood that his role was not just to pray for peace, but to bear witness to the truth, no matter the cost. And it was that truth, hidden in his secret journal, that changed everything for those of us who dared to read it, and for the countless lives still caught in the shadows of war. I still remember the exact moment I found the chaplain's journal. It wasn't some planned discovery or a search for secrets. It was pure chance, or maybe fate. Father Alexander had gone missing during one of the deadliest battles near the front lines. The chaos was so overwhelming that none of us knew what had happened to him. Some whispered he'd been captured, others feared the worst. Days passed without word, and then, while clearing the ruins of his tent, I spotted a battered leather-bound book half buried under broken wood and scattered supplies. It was his journal. Picking it up felt like holding a fragile piece of a man who had vanished into the shadows of war. The cover was worn, stained with dirt and blood, and the pages inside were filled with his neat handwriting, sometimes rushed, sometimes trembling with emotion. I didn't know what to expect, but something told me this journal held more than just prayers or comforting words. There was a weight to it, a sense that these pages contained the truth of what we were all living through, raw and unfiltered. As I began to read, a strange mix of emotions flooded me: shock, curiosity, fear. The chaplain's words pulled me deep into a world few dared to acknowledge. He wrote about moments of despair, moments of hope, and moments so chilling I couldn't believe they were true. The journal wasn't just a record of daily life. It was a confession, a warning, and sometimes a cry for help. His entries were filled with details about events that never made it into official reports, things that, if revealed, could change how we all understood the war. One passage described a night raid where soldiers disappeared without a trace, not due to enemy fire, but something else entirely, something no one wanted to talk about. Another entry hinted at betrayal within our own ranks, commanders making deals behind closed doors that sacrificed lives for political gain. The chaplain wrote about the fear that gripped the unit, how trust was eroding, and paranoia growing with each passing day. His words painted a picture of a war not just against an external enemy, but a war within. Some of the entries were cryptic, almost like codes meant to hide the full meaning from prying eyes. He mentioned the shadows that walk among us, and voices silenced before they could speak, phrases that sent chills down my spine. It was clear he was trying to expose something dangerous, something that powerful forces wanted buried. Yet, despite the risks, he committed these secrets to paper, as if hoping that someone would find them and understand. There was one particularly haunting entry that stuck with me. He described a meeting with a high-ranking officer who warned him to stop writing, to stop questioning. The chaplain ignored the warning, writing instead of "the price we pay for truth" and how silence was the enemy's greatest weapon. Reading those words, I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. The journal was more than a personal diary. It was a lifeline thrown to those willing to listen, a message hidden in plain sight. The deeper I read, the more I realized how dangerous it was to keep this journal. If those in command discovered it, they wouldn't hesitate to silence anyone connected to it. Yet, the chaplain's courage was undeniable. In the midst of devastation, he chose to document the hidden war, the things no one else dared speak aloud. His writings exposed lies, covered up atrocities, and challenged the official narrative that tried to paint the conflict in neat, controllable terms. It wasn't just the words that shocked me, it was the feeling behind them. You could sense the chaplain's growing desperation, the weight of what he carried on his shoulders. His faith was tested every day, and his journal became the place where he wrestled with doubt and hope, guilt and courage. It was like reading the heart of the war itself, beating in ink and paper. I kept reading late into the night, unable to put the journal down. Each page pulled me deeper into a world of secrets and shadows, a world where truth was the most dangerous weapon. The chaplain's words were a warning, a call to remember those lost and to never forget what really happened beyond the battlefield. When I finally closed the journal, I knew I was holding something that could change everything. It wasn't just about history or memory, it was about justice, about exposing the lies that had cost so many lives. And that's when the fear set in, because if the wrong people found out I had this journal, if they discovered I'd read what they wanted destroyed, I knew there would be consequences. But the truth was too important to let die in the flames. From that moment on, the journal became my secret burden, a dangerous truth I carried alone. I was no longer just a soldier following orders. I was a guardian of a story that others wanted buried. And as the war raged on, I couldn't help but wonder, how many others were out there with secrets like this? How many truths had been hidden, burned, or erased? The Chaplain's journal opened my eyes to a war behind the war, a story of fear, betrayal, and courage that few would ever know. It was a reminder that sometimes the most powerful battles are fought not on the front lines, but in the shadows, where words can be weapons and silence can be deadly. And for me, that hidden journal was the key to unlocking those truths, no matter the cost. The order came like a shadow descending in the dead of night, sharp, unquestionable, and wrapped in an eerie silence that spoke volumes. It was delivered directly from the highest levels of command, a strict directive from military intelligence officers whose faces we never saw, but whose presence was felt everywhere. The message was clear: destroy the Chaplain's journal. Every last page, no exceptions, no copies, no witnesses. The urgency behind it was almost suffocating. The tone was cold and final, a command that brooked no argument. They didn't want those papers surviving, didn't want the truths inside to leak out, even if it meant erasing the very memory of what Father Alexander had risked his life to document. When the order reached us, it came with a warning veiled in threat. Any failure to comply would be considered an act of insubordination, punishable by court-martial or worse. The message was unmistakable, the stakes were high, and the powers behind this order would go to any lengths to enforce it. We were not just soldiers anymore. We were the custodians of a secret too dangerous for public eyes. The weight of that responsibility pressed down on me like a lead cloak, heavy and unrelenting. That night, as we gathered the scattered pages and bound volumes from the Chaplain's tent, the air was thick with tension and fear. Flames flickered against the dark sky, hungrily devouring the fragile sheets of paper. The crackling fire swallowed words that had survived bullets and battles, words that spoke of betrayal, fear, and hidden horrors. Watching those pages burn felt like witnessing the erasure of a vital truth, a memory meant to survive far beyond this war zone. Each ash that floated into the night sky was a silent scream lost to the void. But I couldn't let it all go. There was one page I couldn't bear to see vanish into the flames. It was a page that held a secret so critical, so chilling, that destroying it would mean burying the truth forever. My heart pounded as I slipped it beneath my jacket, pressing it close to my chest where no one could find it. The risk was enormous. If anyone caught me, I would be branded a traitor, accused of defying orders, and face consequences that could cost me everything. In those moments, my mind raced with conflicting thoughts. I was torn between duty and conscience, between obedience to command and loyalty to the truth. Every instinct screamed to obey, to burn the evidence, and forget what I had seen in those pages. But something deeper, something stubborn and unyielding, pushed me to resist. That single page was more than just paper. It was a lifeline to a reality too dangerous to ignore. It was a beacon of hope and a warning all at once. As the fire roared behind me, I replayed the words etched into that hidden page. They weren't just notes or reflections. They were a revelation that could unravel carefully constructed lies, expose betrayals within our own ranks, and reveal dangers far greater than the enemy on the battlefield. To lose it would be to lose a chance at justice, at truth, at remembrance for those who could no longer speak for themselves. The fear of being caught was real and paralyzing. I imagined the faces of the officers who had issued the order, stern and unforgiving, their eyes cold with the certainty that silence was the only way to maintain control. I pictured the investigations, the interrogations, and the potential punishment waiting just beyond the horizon if my secret were discovered. But more than fear, I felt the weight of responsibility. I was no longer just a soldier, I had become a guardian of a secret that could change everything. Time seemed to slow as I made my way away from the fire, the hidden page burning a hole in my conscience and jacket pocket. Each step was heavy, each breath cautious. I could feel the eyes of my comrades on me, some suspicious, some resigned to the brutal necessity of the order. No one spoke of the journal anymore, but its absence was palpable. The silence around that fire was louder than any gunshot. In the days that followed, the tension never fully lifted. I lived with the constant fear that someone would discover my secret, that the page would slip from my grasp or be taken from me. Every moment became a delicate balance between hiding the truth and surviving the war itself. I couldn't share the burden with anyone. The risk was too great. The journal's secrets had to remain mine alone, a silent rebellion against the forces determined to keep them buried. Looking back, I realized the order to destroy the chaplain's journal was more than just a military command. It was an attempt to erase a truth, too dangerous to exist. But no fire, no matter how fierce, can burn away the weight of conscience or the power of a hidden secret. That one page I saved became a symbol of resistance, a quiet defiance against a system built on silence and control. It was a choice between obedience and courage, between the easy path and the one that demanded sacrifice. I often wonder what would have happened if I had obeyed completely. Would the truth have died in the flames, or would it have found another way to surface? But I know this. Sometimes the most dangerous act in war isn't fighting the enemy on the battlefield. It's choosing to hold on to the truth when everyone else demands silence. And that night, beneath a sky heavy with smoke and secrets, I made that choice. I still feel the weight of that hidden page pressed against my chest, the way I clutched it like a lifeline in a storm. From the moment I slid it out of the burning pile and tucked it away, I knew it was more than just words on paper. It was a secret that could change everything. The ink on that page wasn't just a record of events. It was a warning, a prophecy, and a confession all wrapped into one. As I read it in the silence of my small tent, the reality of what it contained hit me like a punch to the gut. This was no ordinary journal entry. It was a glimpse into a darkness that few dared to speak of, a revelation that could shatter the fragile illusions many held about this war. The page spoke of betrayal, not from the enemy, but from within our own ranks. Father Alexander had uncovered evidence that key figures, people we trusted with our lives, were involved in deals that compromised the mission and put countless soldiers at risk. It described clandestine meetings, orders given that led to needless deaths, and a web of deceit woven tightly to hide the truth. Reading those lines, I felt a surge of anger and disbelief. How could those who swore to protect us be the very ones endangering our lives? The betrayal was not just strategic, but personal, a deep wound cutting into the heart of our unit's trust and morale. But that wasn't all. The page detailed an unexplained event, something eerie and inexplicable, that the chaplain witnessed firsthand. He wrote about strange lights in the night sky, movements in the shadows that couldn't be explained by enemy forces or natural causes. The descriptions were chilling. Soldiers disappearing without a trace, communications failing at critical moments, and an overwhelming sense of dread that settled over the camp like a suffocating fog. It was clear that whatever was happening was beyond the scope of conventional warfare, something that defied logic and threatened to unravel everything we thought we knew. The most haunting part of the page was the chaplain's grim prophecy about the war's direction. He warned that unless these hidden threats were exposed and confronted, the conflict would spiral into chaos beyond anything we had yet experienced. His words carried a sense of urgency and despair, as if he was pleading for someone to act before it was too late. Reading that, I felt the heavy weight of responsibility settle on my shoulders. This was not just history. It was a call to action, a mandate to protect the truth no matter the cost. Emotionally, the impact was overwhelming. Fear, mixed with determination, in a way I had never known. I was terrified of what this knowledge could mean for me and those around me, but I was equally resolute that such truths could not be silenced. The burden was enormous, carrying a secret that could topple reputations, alter public understanding, and change the course of the war itself. I felt isolated, knowing that sharing this page could endanger my life, yet holding it close felt like the only way to keep hope alive. Every time I reread that hidden page, the faces of those betrayed flashed before me, the friends I had lost, the comrades who deserved better, and the innocent civilians caught in the crossfire of hidden agendas. The chaplain's words gave voice to their suffering and demanded that their stories be told. It was a reminder that behind every battle and strategy, real lives were at stake, and truths needed to break free from the shadows. I understood, too, that this page had the power to change what others believed about the war. It challenged the official narratives crafted to maintain morale and control, revealing the betrayals, unexplained phenomena, and dark prophecies could shake the foundations of trust in our leaders and institutions. But it was a risk I was willing to take. Because some truths, no matter how dangerous, must be brought into the light. The hidden page wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a symbol of resistance against silence and deception. It embodied the struggle between truth and power, conscience and obedience. Holding it, I felt connected to the chaplain in a way that transcended time and circumstance. His courage became my own, fueling a quiet rebellion that I knew could cost me everything. I can't say what will come of this page or if anyone will ever read it beyond these walls, but I carry it with me as a promise that the secrets it holds will not be buried, that the shadows it exposes will not remain forever hidden. It is a warning and a hope wrapped together, a fragment of a story too important to be forgotten. In the end, the hidden page is more than ink and paper. It is the voice of the voiceless, the light in the darkness, and the truth that refuses to die. And for me, that makes it worth every risk, every fear, and every lonely night spent guarding a secret that could change everything. The moment the order was given to destroy the chaplain's journal, everything around me shifted. What had been a tense but steady rhythm in the unit turned into an atmosphere thick with suspicion and fear. The destruction of the papers was meant to erase the past, but instead, it ignited a wildfire of paranoia. Command tightened its grip, and investigations began in whispered conversations behind closed doors. Officers who once seemed distant became watchful predators, scanning faces for signs of disobedience or hidden secrets. The air grew heavy with unspoken accusations, and I could feel the weight of countless eyes probing me, wondering, searching, suspecting. Every day felt like walking a tightrope stretched over a pit of danger. I carried that hidden page like a ticking time bomb, aware that a single misstep could blow everything apart. The journal wasn't just paper, it was a secret too explosive to contain. The moment I thought I was safe, a sudden inspection, a random check, or a stray question would send my heart racing. I remember one night vividly, when a fellow soldier, drunk and careless, nearly found the page tucked inside my coat. I caught the movement just in time, a flicker of panic spreading through my veins as I quickly slipped the paper back into its hiding place. The fear of discovery tightened its grip, but I knew I couldn't give up. The paranoia spread like poison through the ranks. Soldiers whispered about missing documents and mysterious interrogations. Some talked of ghost investigations, searches that happened without explanation, officers appearing suddenly intense, turning over personal belongings, and asking pointed questions about the chaplain and his writings. No one knew exactly who was behind it all, but the message was clear. The truth had become a threat, and those who dared seek it were in danger. I saw trust erode before my eyes. Friends who had shared laughs and stories became cautious, their eyes flickering with doubt and fear. Conversations stopped when I entered a room. Commands were barked more sharply, and the smallest mistake could mean suspicion or worse. The journal's existence was no longer a secret just between me and the chaplain's memory. It was a danger that seemed to reach out, infecting everything it touched. One close call still haunts me. During a routine sweep of our tents, a sharp-eyed officer noticed the bulge where I kept the page hidden. His fingers brushed the edge just long enough for my breath to catch in my throat. Time froze as he paused, then slowly pulled away, giving me a look I can't forget, half suspicion, half warning. I knew then that the margin for error was razor thin. I had to be smarter, quieter, and more careful than ever. As days turned to weeks, the pressure mounted. Rumors circulated that the military intelligence unit was involved directly, hunting anyone with knowledge of the journal. Some soldiers vanished without explanation. Others were quietly reassigned. It was an unspoken game of cat and mouse, and I was the prey carrying a secret too dangerous to survive exposure. The growing danger wasn't just about the hidden page, it was about the truth it represented. That truth was a weapon, and those in power wanted it silenced. But even as fear tightened its grip, something inside me hardened. The chase, the close calls, the paranoia, they only made me more determined. I couldn't let the chaplain's sacrifice be erased, nor could I let the truth be buried beneath layers of lies and threats. Every narrow escape, every whispered warning, only strengthened my resolve to protect that page, no matter the cost. The journal's shadow stretched wider than I imagined. I began to notice subtle changes in the unit, new faces in the middle of the night, strange conversations ending abruptly when I approached, and an unshakable feeling that I was being followed. The war outside was brutal, but this internal hunt was a different kind of terror, a psychological war where silence and secrecy were weapons just as deadly as bullets. Despite the danger, the hidden page became a beacon of hope, a spark of resistance against the crushing weight of control. I clung to it not just as proof of the chaplain's courage, but as a symbol of everything worth fighting for: truth, justice, and the memory of those who had been sacrificed and silenced. Looking back, I realized the consequences of holding onto that page were far greater than I could have imagined. It changed how I moved, who I trusted, and what I was willing to risk. The chase was relentless, a constant reminder that some truths are powerful enough to unsettle entire systems, that the cost of uncovering them can be your life. And so, I lived in the shadows of suspicion and danger, always one step ahead of discovery, carrying a secret that could ignite a revolution or bury me in silence forever. The chaplain's journal wasn't just words on paper, it was a spark that set off a chain of events I couldn't control, but one I was determined to see through to the end, no matter the consequences. There are moments in life when the choices you make carry weight far beyond your own survival. For me, holding onto that hidden page from Father Alexander's journal was one of those moments. I risked everything, not just my career or my safety, but the fragile thread holding my humanity together. Some secrets aren't meant to be buried or erased. They belong to history, to truth, and to those who need them most. I've asked myself countless times why I didn't burn that page with the rest. Why carry this alone in the shadow of war? The answer is simple. The world deserves to know what happened, beyond propaganda, beyond official reports. The chaplain's words were a testament to courage and conscience, in a place where both are often lost. He witnessed things too dark for most to face, trusting that one day, someone would listen. I chose to be that someone. But what comes next? Will the truth ever break free from secrecy and fear? Will the chaplain's voice, muffled by orders and threats, finally be heard? Holding this secret is both privilege and prison, a promise made without knowing the cost. While the war rages openly, a quieter battle unfolds beneath the surface, a battle for truth, memory, and justice. I wonder how many others hide similar pages fragments that could expose greater lies. How many stories have been lost to fire, fear, or silence? History shows truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deep it's buried. The chaplain's journal is one thread in a vast tapestry of untold stories that deserve to be known. To those listening, be vigilant. Question the narratives you're given. Seek the truths hidden in the shadows. The world needs more than silent obedience. It needs courage. Courage to ask hard questions, to guard inconvenient facts, to demand accountability. If you felt the weight of what I've shared, don't let it end here. Share it. Investigate it. Let it spark conversations that challenge the silence. Because when we refuse to forget, when we dare to remember, we keep the past alive and shape the future. This hidden page is more than a relic. It's proof that truth, no matter how dangerous, cannot be extinguished. And as long as there are those willing to carry it forward, there is hope. Ask yourself, what are we willing to risk to uncover the stories buried beneath the surface? And who will be brave enough to tell them? The answers may change everything if we're willing to listen.